front view, we start with the center line, and then we draw. I always start with an egg type of shape as if it's on the small end. And you draw lightly at first, because that way you can make changes easily. And there will be changes. Okay, so the next thing is to find the sphere inside this shape, just because it makes setting up the proportions easier. Halfway across the sphere is going to be the eye line. Once you have the eye line to the top of the head, you divide it in half for where the forehead's going to be. Now this distance from here to here then becomes the distance to the nose. Same distance to the bottom of the chin. And that's why I said you draw lightly, because now what I have to do is bring it in. Meaning this area is going to be the neck. Okay. First thing you want to do is, the head is still 5 eyes wide, just like with the male, with an eye's distance between them. So I'm putting in where the eyes are going to be. The nose is a little to make a female idealized, the nose is slightly less than an eye's width. So here's where the nose is going to be. Okay, and then 2/3 the way between the nose and the chin is where the lips are going to be. First you want to start the lips off as an oval. The mouth isn't as big as on a male. It doesn't go to the center of the eye. It goes actually to the, if the irises were in, it lines up with the inside of the irises. So I'll just lightly put in the iris. And here's the inside. And here's the mouth. The general shape is like a long oval. Okay, the eyebrows are like the fenders of old cars, meaning they arch right about at the quarter mark. So it's 1/4 this way, 3/4 the other way. You also can use this mark to kind of figure out where the side plane of the head is going to be. Okay, now if you notice, she's got a very wide head, so you figure you go out another eye's width and then you square it off. With a female you want the eyes to be larger so you don't quite go out a full eye's length. Okay, now 45-degree angle, or if you want to think of it as, I'm trying to find the jawline with a 45-degree angle. So you try to keep it symmetrical as you can. And that brings you to where the chin is. Keep the chin small and kind of pointy. Okay, so now at this point I'm going in with a finer pencil. So you want to start defining the eyes. As we discussed before in the video on eyes, the lashes are thick on top, but you don't draw individual lashes. So what you want to have is, especially towards the outer side of the head, the lashes get much thicker and they slightly turn up. Okay, so now you want to do the lower lashes. which again towards the outside of the head are thicker, and then as they come in they thin out. And try to look from side to side, meaning you do one eye, you look at the other eye to make sure that they look about the same size. And in the inside section here is where the tear duct, so you extend out the upper lid and just put in that curve for where the eyeball is and the tear duct is. I tend to finish the eyes first because they're the most important feature as far as people look at eyes. Things you don't want to over render a woman's face in a drawing, so even though you know there's the V on both sides of the nose, you just want to kind of, light's coming this way, so you just want to slightly indicate the side plane. Okay, and here's nostril base. Okay, back to the lips. You got to center them on that center line, and there's the dip. There's a dip. In the middle. And there's the opposite kind of a dip here, because if you remember from the mouth demonstration, you have that part of the lip that comes forward. And then the lower lip is like an elongated U, which, by the way, kind of, you gotta, if you ever paint, it subdivides into two sections right here, so you don't necessarily have to draw that in. Alright, so now I'm going back to the eyes, which we discussed earlier, which what I tend to do is you put in the iris first and make sure it looks symmetrical. I'm dropping this down slightly. Okay, make sure that they seem to be looking the same way. And then you put in the pupil. I'm leaving a little bit of a space for, as if there's a reflection that would be in that area. And then you can darken the top where the cast shadow comes across the iris. Okay, so now firming up the jawline. Now, if you wanted to get a little more detailed, the cheeks on a woman actually point or flow towards the mouth. However much you want to exaggerate that. It used to be really exaggerated that you would do this type of thing. Nowadays, less so. Nowadays, they're more angular, squared off. But don't get too angular. Women, you always want to have it as curves. Okay, now the neck is always thinner than the head. And again, look at your center to make sure that. And the neck appears longer because the muscles of the trapezius don't come up as high. They don't attach as high as on a man. On the idealized female anyway. Okay, and then you got the trachea area of the throat. Alright, now for the hair. The hair, of course, is bigger than the head. And so this would be, say this would be her skull. So you want the hair to be above that. It can be more, you can get actually a lot higher hair or bigger hair because women do that with their hair. Get the general shape first. So I'm just going to give her like a general overall shape. And again, look at it as far as the symmetry. Okay, now the hair grows out of I'm going to do her as a blonde because blondes are easier. The hair grows out and then the weight of it causes it to flip forward. So here it is growing out of the scalp and then it drops down because of its weight. Think in terms of S's, like big flowing S-type shapes. By the way, the ears still would line up with, since this is a head-on, still would line up with the base of the nose. That's an earring. And most of that's going to get covered. Now, the hair splits here and starts going in a different direction with this hairstyle. And again, you might want to try to find an S type of curve to soften the features. And think of it as like pinwheeling out of this space. Nothing should be really parallel, that's the main thing. What makes hair look fake or poorly drawn is when you got parallel lines. They're always spiraling or pinwheeling away from each other. So you set up the basic, and then under here you have hair coming from behind, so it might change direction. And again, look for those kind of S-curves and kind of paisley type shapes. This would be behind, whereas this comes over. Do the same thing on the other side, like set up first a big shape, and then this comes. Sometimes you can also create like a zigzag like here. Okay, so now we've got, basic hair. If you wanted to make her look, this is blonde, and by the way, I'm just going to cast a shadow from her onto her neck. Okay, right now she's a blonde. If you wanted to make her more of like a redhead, you would start adding extra shadow to it. Not so much that it would appear like she's a brunette, but just enough that it no longer reads as if she's a blonde. So especially here, because this is all under, meaning it's an underplane, so it's not catching the light. So it's the darkest back by the neck. Okay, same thing here. And if you notice, I'm kind of following the guidelines I laid down before for the hair when she was blonde. Okay, so I'm coming around from the back to darken it, but you don't want to get too dark because otherwise she won't look like she has red hair. I'm working around the back. Okay, now she'd be more at like a redhead stage of hair. Alright, now if I want to make her brunette, you got to figure out where, or black hair, where the highlight's going to be. Basically, I'm going to just draw this off to the side. Here's the shape of the head, so the hair is going to get a highlight right in this area and in this area primarily. Meaning all this would be the dark part of the hair. So what you got to do is look for that, meaning it comes up to, except of course you have to have the strokes cut through the highlight, some of them, but the hair's reflective and shiny, hopefully. So you have to find the area where the highlight will be. Usually I use a softer pencil for this too. Okay, so now you're coming across the top of the head and you're creating this highlight here, which always gets smaller towards the back of the head. Throw some strands that go across it, otherwise it kind of looks, not a lot of strands, but just enough that it doesn't look like a blank space. Okay, and then again, like here, you got, this continues the highlight because of her hairstyle. I didn't do it on this one, but because of her hairstyle, this would be catching the light. I'll make it a little more obvious so you can see where the highlights would be. So there you can really see the highlighted area. Same thing's going to happen here. You're going to get more of a highlight in this area where it's catching the light coming down. And here you got, this corresponds to this, so again, it gives that shiny look to the hair. And if she was brunette, most of this is just going to fall into a general value of being dark, especially behind the ear where it's coming out from behind. And by the way, the ear itself would be in the shadow. You might want to leave it out. This would end up in the shadow because the hair's blocking the light. But don't lose the feel of that it's coming out of the scalp. Don't make it solid looking. Just like if you had an eraser, you can like slightly cut back in to here so that it breaks up any kind of line. It does, you don't want it to look like a wig. Okay, now I'm like bringing in her jawline a little bit so she looks softer and it's more of a curve. And again, the chin before it was a little long, it's a little pointy, so I'm just softening it. Okay, back to the eyes. I'm just doing the upper eyelid, which you usually see, not necessarily the whole eyelid, just right here where it, and then that's basically it. Female head. Okay, goodbye.